I'm Jewell, but you're not gonna see my face. So you're gonna see my work area. And this is my work area. I go by the name Jewell, and you see how obvious. Why? Because there are many Susans or Sue, but there was only one Jewell, and that is my last name. So I go by Jewell. If you wanna find me, you can message me on Facebook. I'm Susan Jewell. That picture that appears on February is what should appear on my timeline after February. I have my SCA badge up right now because it's a heart within a heart. I've been the president of the Southwest Regional Spinners, and that group is over 32 years old. So we've been around a while. And our main focus was to have a retreat to educate and learn things versus we meet once a month. And you're more than welcome if you're interested. I put our spin-ins on Zoom. Okay, on my paper here, I'm going to talk about teeth first. These are Howards, and they're 90. These are Clemens, about a 54 different.
And what do these numbers mean? 90 or 54 what?
Teeth per inch. I'm just going to call them teeth. Nails.
Thank you.
So if you square off an inch, it'll be, these are 90, these are about 54, and Carters are 120. All right, there are 3 types of Carters. All right, and the first, we see these small ones, and whenever you see reference to these smaller ones, they're called student, and these are called standards. Then there are the Howards, who are curved. They're flat backs, but they're cut in a curve. They're not flat. There are some Carters that are completely flat, and this equals same on both ends, just very flat. The Clemens have this arch in it, in the wood itself. I spun on these for about 28 years. I carted off these for 28 years, and I went to Olds College Level 1, and I was introduced to the butterfly method, and I never turned around and went back. And during that time, I asked people, what are the difference? I have a lot of friends who are instructors. And I said, which card do you like, Carter, Howard's, or LeClaire's? Flat or curved, semi-curved, or flat, some curved or semi-curved. And they would always take the Clemens, but they couldn't give me the reason why. And the reason why I do not use these anymore, the curved backs are way too hard ergonomics on your wrist. And I had a lot of friends said that they're not going to spin because, or they're not going to card because it's so hard. And most people do what I call pet the kitty. I had an instructor that talked about petting the kitty, because you would put it on there and you'd hear, you know, a cat would kill you if you did that to a cat. So if you're doing it, pet the kitty is doing it like this, which you very rarely hear the teeth. And you are rolling it back and forth, changing, okay, flipping it off, and then carding. Let me see your hands. Do most of you do curved carders? Say yes or no. Okay. That's a fast way. I have my dancers train that. This means I have a question, yes or no, and then I can go on it. So I'm not sure how many of you have carded, or if you're beginner carders. But I don't do bet the giddy anymore, and I have these around because people like them. They buy them from me because they see I still have them, and they buy my used ones. But I've gone to Howard & Howard, and there's a reason. The butterfly method is very loose for the wrist. It's a tapping motion, and you're working your way up the carder and you're loading. See how clean my carders are? They're always clean with the butterfly method. I also do my cotton with these 90s because they're pretty fine. During the butterfly method, I do long, I do cotton, I do all sorts of stuff with these. When you look at a carder and you load, you leave an inch all the way around your carder empty. This is empty, this is empty, and this is empty. Because the more you card, if you're blending, your fiber will spread out and you'll have thick on each side and a thin center every time you exchange your cards. So I'm going to get some roving. Oh, let me talk about a little thing about roving. When these come off a machine, they go in a cone. Then from a cone, they can go into a bump or balls. And the direction of how they're wound changes. If you are spinning and you have a hard time spinning, change and do the other end. Because when they're taken off the machine, there is a one-way direction. Ever so mute, but there is a one-way direction. So that's just a little tip that I learned. Okay, so I take the roving and I snap it a little bit because all I want is the tip, the very tip, relax. And I'm just going to very lightly put the tips down and tap and then pull. If you load your carders in this manner, you will have very little work to do, and chances are you don't even have to card it. You're using it almost like a blending board. Then I like to set them between my knees. And remember those little troll dowels? You don't want to overlap. You want to just bring your fibers straight up to keep them all parallel. Now the thing that I like to use are either plastic chopsticks or 2 sticks, very fine. And this came about when blending boards came about. They used 2 sticks to take them off. So I just take it. I like the chopsticks because they're square. And I put opposite ends, and it keeps them from rolling. Now, I just hold it very gently, go to the tips. Here's the tips. Start rolling. And if I want this fluffy, I'll pull it away from the card, little tug away from the card. And if I want, when I get down here, I just roll the rolag, not real hard, just enough at the bottom of the carder to take all the ends in. And then I pull one out, pull the other one out, and I have a perfect rolag. I'm really into rolags because you can, this is a woolen rolag because I rolled it off this way, vertically. Now I'm going to load it again. It's ready to go. This time I'm going to pull it off very gently. Then I'm going to roll it like a sausage. And those of you who spin, that will give you worsted. All your fibers are parallel. This rolag was done woolen, rolled off like a hot dog, and it's a circular motion like a tornado. And the hairs have gotten crossed. Think woolen, a sheep, and worsted, a man's worsted wool of his suit. So if you're going to do a drapey veil or head cover, something that you want drapey and thin, you wouldn't use worsted, because worsted will come off very tight and hard. And that's a whole nother ballgame, showing you how to spin with these two. But I like rolags for the simple reason I show all my students is that, say you got a fiber, someone got Angora rabbit and they're having a hard time spinning. I said, well, do the 90-10 trip. You have 100% wool and 100% Angora. Then you have 90, 10, 80, 20, until you blend and get used to doing 100% Angora. It helps you spin finer fibers. So if you have problems with anything, you can do the 100, 100, and then the percentage back and forth until you get a handle on how to do it so you don't waste it. Now, the butterfly method is, say you have some raw wool and it's trashy and it has fibers in it. So your wool looks like, this is teasing. You can blend, you can tease. It's another method of spinning. Or some people call making a cloud, and you can blend fibers in this way. So you have it like this, and you think, okay, I've got a wad or a lock. I'm just going to take a small handful of it, and I'm just going to lay, getting the tip. If you take the time to load your carder, you don't have to card very hard. As I'm loading and as it's pulling down, it's straightening out the fibers so that they're all running parallel to one another. And if you do this with locks, as you do this, you can do your lock, take the garbage out here, take your other carder, and when you're done with that lock and you've cleaned it, you can put it on your other free carder. And you're ready to go, and you've cleaned it. So back to the butterfly. Another reason why you don't, the butterfly system is good is when you cut the kitty, you build up on this edge of your carder, and when you take it off, you get these little bumps like this, and because they've wrapped themselves around the teeth. That's another reason. And then when you get those bumps and you try to spin, it's like nulls. Okay, with the butterfly, we don't have a left and a right. And someone had asked me, why did we mark our carders left and right? It's because in the early days, when the carder was made out of leather and the nails or the teeth, they would bend and move. So you always had one for your right and one for your left. But today, now that they're rubber backed, you don't have that problem. So you can see it's still tangled up a little bit. So I'm going to take this part of my carder, and it doesn't matter if I pass my 1-inch marks, and I'm going to tap it. Now, if this is real long, it'd be like hair on your head. You would just tap it here, pull, and I'm slowly working my way up. I'm connected, 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 there. That shows you how far I need to get away from my carders so I don't double back on itself. And then I was a blonde, so I can say, do the blonde flip so that all your tails are on the other side. And you just work your way up very, I'm barely gripping to keep them in my hands. And I work my way up. So now that carter is clean, all parallel. Again, I don't even have to change hands like in Pet the Kitty or take it off. I'm just laying it. And this time I'm working, this part is working down my carter. Clean carter. Then I hold it vertically and bring it up. If you roll it off with your fingers, just be careful that you don't do a burrito. You want to do sushi. Not a burrito, sushi. Because when you take these ends and you fold them in, as you spin, they're going to grab and you're going to have like a yank when you actually spin. And I'm just going to roll this off. Now, a pony, if I made this really, really tight, see how tight it is there? That will be cotton, and that's called a pony, and you have pony sticks. But I'm going to loosen it up a little bit, go back, not have it tight, pull it out a little bit, pull it out a little bit, go down to the bottom, just very gently roll it to get all the ends in, nice and fluffy. Now, to know if your rolag, and research kind of tells that it meant something in food, and that's the only thing that I've ever come up with, the history part of rolag. If you hold this up to the light and you see a dark area in here, that means something's crossed. You put a thick spot on your carter, like a thick, thin, and it's not even. This is totally even. If I held it up to the light, I wouldn't see those pockets. And then I would put them in a box because you don't want to crush rolags. What rolags are good for is a long draw. Excellent for long draw. Or making a chunkier yarn so you have control. Because worsted, spinning worsted, you're only doing about 1.5 inches at a time. Called taking a deck of cards and you're dealing, and I'm spinning, and I'm only pulling off 1 inch at a time. I can also take these rolags and pre-draft them. Once you go skinny, you can't go fat, and if you spin, you understand what that meant. When I was a beginner spinner, I had fat yarn. Now I do it fine, and I can't get back to fat. So what I would do is pre-draft this. I can pre-draft, put a slight twist in it, and then I can control the thickness, the fat part of what I want. See how nice that's coming out of there? If you do a nice rolag, your spinning is going to be like butter. See how gently that's pulling, and it just pulls out, and you have a beautiful piece. So I'm going to load again. Because if you spin off roving, you are spinning worsted because all the fibers are laying parallel to one another. If you're spinning off a drum bat, they're semi all going in one direction, and you peel part off and use it. But if you want to spin woolen and long draw and have it soft, then do a roll-it. So I'm going to show you how I can go back and forth. So I'm doing the tails first, like brushing your hair, getting the knots out. I'm going up. It's tap, lift. I'm tapping. I tilt it to lock it in. I lift it above the nails, and then I bring it out. I can do rolags fast to keep 6 drop spindle spinners going, because this is just so easy. Now, if I wanted to go back, just go back. Now, that took skill to go back and forth. So what would I do if that's a skill you have to learn. All you do is change hands and reload it. You can just change your hands. And then I can go back and forth, but I've never mastered the flick, roll, pop it off. That's something I don't know if I ever will. So before I started this class, I creamed my hands twice. I forgot to talk about hands. When you are carding, combing, teasing, spinning, when it's very dry out, you need to have moisture on your hands, but you don't want to over cream them so you have sludge and you're trying to spin. In the summertime, carding, all the methods that I talked about, you may have moist hands. I've had students who have always had moist hands no matter what time of year. So we would always put a little powder on it. Or I'd say if your hands are moist and you have blue jeans, go like this, because blue jeans have a lot of loose fiber on them. Again, just roll off. Now, you can just barely see these fine tips against my shirt, right here. So as I bring this up, tips, 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 right about there, because you don't want your tips to fold over. You may take a few little winds to get your tips going. Now, I'm there. Now, if I want to blend it a little more, I can pull it up, wind, pull it up, wind, pull it up, wind, pull it up. Rolling. Now, tapping, tap, tilt, lift just a tad so you can get past, and pull. If you tap, lift, and pull up, all the fiber will pull right off that card. So tap, tilt, lift, pull out, going down. Now, if you go down like this, you're going to look, you won't take it off that card either. Right like this. Tap, tilt, lift, pull. Tap, tilt, lift, pull. Again, you're just using this part. Now, another good thing about the butterfly method, when you're doing this and you're pulling, if you got trash, the trash is going to fall on the floor. If you're doing pet the kitty, the trash gets into your carders. All those little, if it's real dry, you'll get a lot of vegetable matter. You can get it out doing the butterfly method because you're doing this and it's falling on the floor. Change. Now, what's really, I'm going to give you a second to get some water. I've got to bring something else. I'm going to go get it. Yeah, I got it. So another thing that's really nice about butterfly is that when you load, I can put some some blue. Pink. And brown. Now you see when I'm loading this, you see how matted like and gnarly this is? By just taking the tip and putting it on here and pulling it, I'm doing, you know, carding all before I even card. Because as I pull it out, the fibers are going nice and straight. Almost looks like ice cream. So, let's see. I'm gonna tap. Clean. Do you see what happened? If we would have done Pet the Kitty, we would have blended that in. But this keeps your rolag, your stripes in there, blends it enough so that the color here will catch on to one another. So that when I spin, I'll have brown, pink, blue. If I did it Pet the Kitty, here's the brown, I would load. Blue. Yellow. Now I'm not taking this hand and you don't want to embed it. You just want it on the top of your teeth. So Pet the Kitty would be this. I'd be going back and forth. And then I would load it again. Do you see how some of the wool is starting to get on the edges of these? That will give you bumps. Will take on a place of a note. Now see the difference between this? Reload it on with this one. It's hard to do Pet the Kitty with the Howards because they're 90s. These are 90s. And it's hard to get all that out. Now, if I take that butterfly method and just tap it, I can clean it out really fast. So as I blend, this is what I get versus this. So that's one of the advantages of doing butterfly method, because you will keep your colors in their zones. The blue, sand blue, there'll be a little overlapping so that when you, let me get this off. And if you don't have chopsticks, you can get 2 wooden sticks like this but you must really sand them down, because as you pull them out, if there's any burrs or wood sticking up, it's going to catch on the rolag. And then again, if you get a nick in your sticks, you take a piece like scissors or do this, and I just roll it around and around. A friend was asking me what, he couldn't figure out what I was doing for an hour because one of the sticks got nicked on the trip. So this would normally be taken off like this, or rolled off like this. So it sits on top. And then you would roll it like this. You wouldn't use your sticks. You would roll it off like a sushi, not like a burrito. Now, when I draft this out, and it's whenever you draft it out, you put a slight twist in it like you do when you comb fiber. Now draft this one. To me, the butterfly drafts out like butter. This one was done butterfly method and the colors stayed side by side. This one was done pet the kitty and they became more homogeneous. So depending on what look you want. But once you do a butterfly, and I worked on it for a year because I wanted to give it a real chance. And I know people that started with it and they dropped it, but I stayed with it. And I'm just amazed how fast I can do things. And when I teach drop spindle, I like to make good rolags for everyone so that the spinning process is just like nothing. It melts like butter. One of my students just sent me an email because we do Zoom. She says, my rolags are getting kind of nasty because now the spinning is difficult. And she took time to look at the rolag and said, yeah, she's having problems. So see, it's nice. You can roll it up, ready to go. Neither technique is wrong. In fact, there's a DVD out, and I've since forgotten the name of it, but these two little Mexican ladies, they were just incredible. They would just take, they both had flat Carter's flap. The nails are all over the place. And she just packed that thing down, packed it and packed it, and she would just, poof, one would roll down. Poof, one would roll down. And she was just beating it, and another one, and she was able to get like 4 rolags off one carter. It was magical. I just love it. And she's laughing like, yeah, go ahead and try it, dude. This is real easy, you know. And then whoosh, whoosh, and she was tossing them down. And she took several from one carter. And I just thought, oh, that's magical. I am really big into ergonomics because of my age. I started over 34 years ago spinning and carding, and now one has to be more careful with your hands. And anybody that I taught the butterfly method to, if they have hand problems, it's easy to do. Or Pet the Kitty, you really have to hold these two. And then reload, reload. And then you get a fluffier, more woolen effect because the fibers get messier. Any questions? No questions? Everybody awake? Yeah, I think everybody's snoozing too. How many people do we have?
I'm busy writing notes.
Oh, and feel free. My email address is mail, like to mail a letter, MAIL, the number 4, Jewell with 2 L's, JEWELL @yahoo.com. And I'm also on Facebook. And what my specialty area is teaching beginners. All different stuff, but teaching beginners. Trying to give them all the tips and things that I've learned through the years from other spinners and other instructors. Whenever I see a beginning cotton, I always sit in a beginning cotton class. And Ruth Rowan, who's internationally known, said, Susan, you've been in here 4 times. And I said, yeah, but you know, you always learn something, and I want to make sure I'm not missing out on something that would make my life easier. And the 90s, the only thing you have to be careful with the Howards when you buy them is they're very sharp until you use them a lot, and then they dull up a little bit. But I love the Howards. They're my favorites. And today, we were going through the closets here at the studio, and I found my cotton carders, which I have thought have been lost for years, and they happened to be packed in a tub, and they're 120 nails per inch. And I always thought they just disappeared because they look like regular carders, but I would never use them. I've done exotics, all sorts of stuff on my 90s. And because you're not loading the whole card and using that inch around your carder, I can't tell you either method, Pet the Kitty or butterfly, if you leave an inch as you card, it spreads out. Because sometimes if you had a rolag and you're spinning and it's a little difficult, and then you spin halfway through and then it starts getting difficult. It's because it's spread out on your carder. How many people do we have in the class? Susie or Susan? Ms. Fox?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, it's Jocelyn / Ainsley in the SCA. Is it the same method when you're using the curved back cards?
Yes. I'll demonstrate with the curve back. I just don't use them because it's a lot of wrist action. Okay. And I'm not, I'm just tapping it lightly, just holding the tips. I'm not pushing it in, just lightly tapping it so it connects. Because if you take the time to pull it right, you're not going to have to card very long. Okay, I'm going to do the tap. The key is here, I'll pretend this is slow motion. Because you don't want to do that. You don't want to get that roll in there. Clean. There it is, it's ready to go. Because you took the time when you're loading it, you don't have to card a lot. Sometimes you will have to push it off the nails sometimes. So this is with the Clemens and Clemens. Now you'll notice and you can take novelty, you can take bling, you can take anything like a blending board. It's loading a lot like a blending board. Okay, now I'm going to do a tap again, but watch how I have to do more wrist, because in order to tap, my wrist has to be way up here because the carders are bent. But if you just keep it loose, you're doing more action because you're only using about 1.5 inches here, so I have to really tilt. But your hands should be very loose. I mean, just barely hanging on to these carders. I got people that gave up on carders a long time ago. And once I showed them this method, they were like, oh my God, this is so easy. Remember, don't pull it tight. This is tight. Just give it some air, pull it out, roll, pull it out, roll. And I just like to do this to get all the ends in. And I'll sit and make a bunch of those and watch TV. Now, those of you who don't weave and you knit, or those of you who weave and you don't knit, this really presents itself well, that you can do a slight twist and make chunky, real chunky yarn to insert in a weaving. See just how, see if, see if you can see the twist in here. See how easy that's pulling out? That'd be so easy to spin. It's not pulling, it's not grabbing big chunks of stuff. Now, once you introduce odd stuff, then you might get a chunk, but it's still going to pull out very, very easy to spin. Any other questions? Questions about carders?
Question from the text. Can you demonstrate with washed fleece rather than commercial roving?
Yeah. In fact, I think this is even raw. Hasn't even been washed once. So what I would use one carder as a flicker, and the other carder I would blend. I always like to hold on to my tips. Oops. So flicking can be done by pounding it on your leg like this. You have some leather and you go like that, and you flick it. It can be done that on your leg and flicking it. Then I turn it around. What's and you do first, that's a preference. That's your own preference. This is kind of short. So I've flicked it. I've got most of the stuff out of it. Then I would take the carder, the other one, and I would just load it like that. And then you just butterfly it. Did you want me to continue it so you could watch me do the flick?
Yes, please.
Okay. This stuff's pretty darn dirty. Oh, I like to hold on to the tips. See how clean that is? See how dirty that is? And then I load. Then I go get some more.
Those cards are going to get pretty manky. What do you use to wash them with?
My carders?
Well, yeah, you got all that sheep dirt in them when you do this.
You just brush them back and forth. It also has lanolin. Lanolin in this is also helping the nails, protects them. Someone said, what do you do with things that are rusted? Well, they used to take raw wool and rub on their tines. See, all my vegetation is just on the tip. It's right here. It's not down here. And these are real old perf carders. And this is pretty short cut. And then if this was washed, I would have skirted more of the vegetation like that out. Be real healthy about skirting so you don't have pain trying to clean it and get it out. And what you can do, if you have a fleece that's real dirty, you put it in cool water for 24 hours. You let it soak for 24 hours. So if there's anything in it, it will fall, then you drain it. Then you begin your wash. You're either gonna wash or scour, depending on how dirty your fleece is. So again, I'm putting this on and just pulling it out like I was loading roving. That's the waist. Because it's so short, this is a very short staple that you see. I'm not going way up here. I'm staying where that would be. Okay.
There we are. Look how even that is. You could make a great rain hat. It's in the grease. It won't. No water will hit your head.
Plus, you'll notice how, you remember how dirty it was. I mean, it had tags on it, poop. I'm the poop queen, because whenever we do stuff, I was always the carder, and I always got poop. See how easy that is to draw out of that? And that's in the raw. And you saw how dirty it was. So that's why I'm sold on butterfly, because you're not dirtying your whole card. This gives you an idea how dirty this is. I pulled that out of that. And some people like to spin in the grease because, yeah, it is a rainproof. And I could feel all the trash on my legs because as I was doing this, the trash was falling down. And you get more out. So just that little bit of effort. So can you imagine if that fleece would have been washed? This is a merino, how white and soft that would be. And all the trash that I got out of it. Again, you don't load the whole card. That was a short staple, so I only loaded this first part of the card. If the staple was this long, if it's really long, I won't go past my inch, try not to, and I let it hang off. Now it's hard sometimes when you have long ends, and what you can get for that is you just put it on your leg and you start brushing off your leg and then go into your carder. I mean, do you see how loose my hands are? I mean, they're, and often I will put my hands on students, or I say, put your hands over my hands to feel how the loose, you know, and you just creep up. It's this inch creeps up. Any questions? How many of you are?
Not looking like any questions. We're almost up to the hour.
Okay, well, again, if even when you have dog brushes, you have any kind of a brush, if you load it this way, you're gonna have nice rolags. And that's, you know, carders can start at $55. So if you don't have $55, do 2 dog brushes. because it's all about the loading. Because as you take the time to load and you take the time and get all your fibers parallel, not jamming this thing full, you just roll it off. You've got it. You don't have to go out and buy carders. Same kind of roll off as a blending board. You can use this like a blending board by laying stuff on it and then rolling it off into rolags. So I hope, did at least y'all learn one new thing today?
Oh, we sure did.
So nobody has, I hope you guys learned a lot.
I learned everything I was doing wrong. I'm gonna butterfly from now on.
Butterflying is so easy. And you don't have to be on step 3. I butterfly, I only do step 2 to step 2 back and forth, but you can change your hands and then roll it off. You learn how to roll off on that, you can roll off on a blending board. Someone said, how can you be consistent for each rolag? Okay, what you do is you make little piles. So much white, so much white, so much white, so much white, so much pink, so much pink, so much pink. Then you take your little piles and then your rolags will be the same. That's the same as a carder, a drum carder, a blending board. You have your little piles and they're weighed out, and then you can make massive amounts of the same thing.
I found this all very interesting because I've realized now that I've been instinctively doing it this way, the butterfly way.
Oh, good. I looked and looked and I came across one instructor on a DVD who called it butterfly. And so I stuck with that. I just use it all the time because like I said, you could do roving, put it in your weaving. You don't have to spin it up. It makes, you have consistent spinning rolags. I know people that do roving, and this is a story. Okay, you get roving, there's top and there's roving. Top is that all your butts and your tips, when they lay it in, all the tips are at one end and butts are at one end when they feed it in the machine. Roving, they just feed it in the machine. The butts, the cuts, they throw the fleece in, that it tears, grinds it so that they're all parallel. So I wanted to make this thing. I loved the fiber, and I kept on doing it, spinning the roving, worsted, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted a woolen effect. And that's just recently, and I thought, what? And then it dawned on me. I was spinning it worsted versus woolen. Worsted, you spin directly off roving because it's all laying in one direction. Worsted, woolen, think of little sheep in the sky, fluffy, and it's a tornado. So a hot dog is woolen and a sausage is worsted. When you pull it off cones, worsted. So identify the project you want, and that's what I tell beginners. I've been on a journey to spin up all my stash that I've had for years. And luckily I had 2 color schemes that I always stayed with. But when I did Olds College, she said, buy for the project you're doing, or you're making fiber, because you're gonna get a bunch of stash that you haven't seen. And some of my stash, I figured, was 30 years old. So, yeah.
Good thing it never goes out of fashion.
Yeah. And I have color families that I always use from. So I spun for the month of, this is, what was before February? March.
January.
January? Okay, January I did 20 minutes a day spinning or more. By the end of the month, I had spun up 2,332 yards. And I still have like 5 bags in my stash to go. And then I have all this yarn, and so what are you going to do? I said, well, probably a ruan or some kind of a coat, jacket. I'm not a vest person, just something I can throw on. And know your project, because you know, if you're spinning woolen and it's all woolen and you want to do something heavy duty that's going to take abuse, you're not going to do woolen for socks because they'll fall apart. And what my goal now is, I taught myself nail binding starting November 20th, and I documented my journey because it was something totally new for me. My next step is to make yarn, single ply, but thick. So for nail binding, that's my goal, my next target.
That's going to be great. Well, we look forward to seeing your completed projects one of these days.
Well, I just posted my rugs. I did 7 rugs, rag rugs. And if you go on my timeline or Southwest Regional Spinners, you'll go on my timeline, you'll see my 7 rugs. And I started them in October, and I just finished the last one for my brother. 2 are going to a brother, 2 are going to a friend, and my cats love them. I mean, the one will bunch it all up in front of the fireplace, and then I came back and sat down, and I was like, it was totally straight. Then I came back, then it was bunched up again. He decorates how he wants that rug. But they're great. They're well, I'd love to do a lot of things, because now's the time for learning. Any questions?
Thank you very much. This is really.
My drops because I'm not very good at yen, so I don't practice very often. Some people, the drop spindle is just the easiest thing in the world. It's not me.
And I put the drop and drop spindle.
I teach you drop spindle is the easiest thing in the world, but I don't use a drop spindle to start you on. I use a stick.
Oh, I know.
What
So
do you start people on?
So if that's something, it's stick with a hook. And again, I got my first year, level 1 of Olds College, master spinners. They had so many tricks, and a spinning on a stick teaches you how to draft with your left hand. So if you're interested in it, we can Zoom one-on-one, and I can show you how to do it. And if you buy wool, if anybody ever says, I have a sheep and you can have the free wool, run. Or if you get it, skirt it outside, get rid of most of it, and just keep the good stuff. And then freeze it to make sure it doesn't have moss in it. You don't want to bring stuff into your house and then contaminate all your other wool.
Oh boy, no kidding. One of my SCA sisters says, you know, they had, you know, fine Scottish woolens and expensive kilts and stuff in the house, and she brought in some raw wool, and oh, that did not go well.
I had to repair an outfit, and I used darning with a fuzzy thread, and I also did dry felting in spots. Her mother died. She had a cedar-lined closet for all her clothes. Well, when her mother passed, she thought her mother's clothes, didn't think anything of it. Took them, put them in her closet, and they had moss. And they ate some of the beautiful things that came from South America. The coat was just unbelievable. And once you get them, they're kind of hard to get rid of. So I leave them out in the car when it's 110. Nuke it for a while, and then I put it in the freezer. But my preference is not raw wool. I had that early in my life, and it's not my preference now. But it's lanolin, and people, if you weave and your beater bars are rusting or things are rusting, take raw wool and rub it up and down. Rub it in your teeth of your carders, because the lanolin is what keeps your tools from rusting. That's way back.
I'm not going to use it on my kitchen knives, though. That's not good eats.
Give it a little flavor.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for coming. This has been Fibruary the last day, and our guest has been Susan Jewell, teaching butterfly carding.
I always go off of my Zoom class and I say, live long and prosperous. And this means don't kill the people who you're living with and cooped up with. So we just say long and prosperous.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, guys.